movement in the market. It looked pretty obvious. As I reported right before the commercial break, oil was above $90 a barrel. Let me know when we have that up, guys. He is canceling all strikes right now. Guys, pop that up when you have a second. Or send it into my email. That's big news. And obviously that would be impacting oil prices. President Trump canceling new strikes on Iran. We're waiting on more details. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's huge news because yesterday we got CPI, today we got PPI. To your point, if we strip out energy, it's a clear energy shock. So now that we have headlines with escalated tension, that's what caused the market to sell off yesterday because energy is now leaking into inflation and we don't want that to hurt the consumer. So now if strikes are coming off, that bodes very well for oil.
All right, let me get this in here. Here's the True Social. Based on the fact that discussions with the Islamic Republic of Iran have been brought to the highest level of Iranian leadership and approved, writes President Trump, I have, as President of the United States of America, canceled the scheduled strikes and bombings against Iran this evening. Discussions and final points have been, in both concept and great detail, approved by all parties involved, including the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and others. The naval blockade will remain in full force and effect until this transition is finalized. Time and place of this signing to be announced shortly. So we will see if we hear directly from the president here in the next few moments. If we could pop up the big board as well, while we're seeing oil prices come down on this news out of the White House, watch this.
That rally keeps getting bigger.
Look at that U.S. stock market spike on the news.
Two things I think are different this time, right? Those four dreaded words on Wall Street. One is we have the direct line of communication with the Iranians, right? The president was not doing that before. And two, he's keeping on the leverage here, keeping the blockade in force, knowing that their one tactic is delay, 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 not giving them that flexibility this time.
Wow. Obviously, the market's going to not taking any time to react to this. As we noted, the drop in oil prices once President Trump issued this statement canceling new strikes on Iran. Oil prices dove down now about $3, down to $87 a barrel. I keep looking at that. I was like, you know, even though we saw the spikes to $90, $100 a barrel, even President Trump would note that, you know, in the face of so much geopolitical risk, historically, we would have seen a massive oil spike,
$115, $120.
$200 a barrel. We never quite saw that, but now you have at least some news affecting this right now, and you're already dropping to $87 a barrel, which is really interesting.
Yeah, look, I think if we pull up the futures curve tomorrow, you're going to see the 70s come in before the end of the year. You've seen the Energy Information Agency thinks we'll get back to 80s. That's all good news because it takes about 2 months for gas prices to adjust. We're off the highs of $4.50 national average. Let's get back to a 3 handle, and the midterms start looking a lot better for the math for Republicans.
I should note, too, that gas prices came down overnight by 2 pennies. I mean, they're well off where they were just a month ago. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if we even pull the recent report that we got on June 9th, we saw that there's even demand destruction that's already happening. So since the market is forward-looking, we're looking forward more to resolution rather than war, and that's where the trade is happening. So to your point with the futures curve, but also if you look at shorts, traders are shorting this, betting on that that we're going to have
calm is coming.
Exactly.
That the end is near. I think that's fair. I really think that's fair. If you hear what is coming out of the White House right now. So stock market up, oil prices down. Looks the fear trade is fading a bit. I'm also looking at the precious metals market. Often this is sort of the safe haven in times of uncertainty for investors. Gold right now is diving about $32 an ounce. So there's a major reaction in markets to the president's news just now.
Yeah, let's not forget about the Fed either, because the Fed's been handcuffed with higher energy prices. If we get back into the 70s here in short order, this idea of maybe a cut at the end of the year, if the economy is cruising along, could happen again. But I think right now cuts are completely off the table.
And especially you look at the U.S. equity market in the face of what was, you know, an inflation report not super favorable to the White House or to the American consumer. The stock market still has been resilient in the face of that.
It has. Actually, I would argue that that inflation report was actually really well. You have to dig into the details. So from an earnings perspective from the stock market, we just came out of record earnings that we haven't seen since 2021. These are levels we haven't seen normally coming out of recessions. From those inflation prints, if we were to look at core goods, you could actually see that tariff inflation has starting to come out. That's subsided. And now we just see an influx of energy inflation just starting to show up. But those are energy shocks that normally we look through as long as inflation expectations are well anchored to 2%, and seeing the 2-year come down, seeing the dollar starting to weaken, gold coming up, every thing that was happening with markets pre-Iran conflict is reversing, which is boding well for markets. So once we get a conflict on the table, or that strait is opened, or because we're forward-looking, we need to at least expect it, then that bodes extremely well for market. Because again, record earnings.
I think it's fair to say the president is keeping Iran guessing, keeping the world guessing. Thanks to both of you. And John, as I hand off to you, I just want to note that President Trump, as he calls off these new military strikes, this is just hours after threatening to escalate the situation. So you have a market that's sort of been watching all the movements of this war. And as we just saw on the screen a moment ago, while oil prices are plunging, I think they just took another leg down. They're now below $87 a barrel, John. This is almost a 4% drop.
Yeah, I mean, when you take a look at it, you say the right thing and the markets react. And the president apparently has said the right thing because the markets and a lot of other folks, the oil markets obviously as well, were expecting that this was going to escalate tonight. Let's bring in Byron York, Fox News contributor. So the president said that he was going to hit Iran very hard tonight.
New York, anybody there? We're ready.
He's now saying that we hear Mark Meredith. He's champing at the bit to get on TV. We'll get to him in just a second here. But the fact that the president said that he was going to hit Iran very hard tonight, and now he says a deal is basically at hand. It's calming the markets, but I mean, how many times have we heard a deal is at hand?
I haven't actually counted, but there have been a whole lot of them. And the president has often said, we're very close. We think it'll be in a couple of days. He always does a caution like, maybe it won't happen. I can't be sure, but it's coming soon. And he said that over and over and over again. And I think a lot of critics of the president have thought that it has given the Iranians the impression that the president does not really want to go through with these attacks, and he's looking for an excuse not to do it. So we'll have to see exactly how this works out now, but we have seen this show a number of times before.
Yeah, and there was a sense that because the president seemed reluctant to go back to kinetic military action, that the Iranian leadership was basically tweaking his nose. They were playing like they're the toughest dog on the block, that Iran's got this vast, powerful military, and they don't. I mean, how many missiles did they fire? How many drones did they fire? Yeah. They hit an Apache helicopter, and thank God the drone didn't explode, but everything else that they were firing at Kuwait and the Emirates and Israel, nothing happened. So,
well, it was the Apache attack that really, I think, sent this to another level and made it impossible to keep what Trump has been calling a ceasefire going on. You know, the other day Trump was asked, well, what does ceasefire mean to you? And he said, well, in that part of the world, it means you're shooting in a more moderate manner. And that was impossible to maintain after they downed an American helicopter and just by grace didn't kill 2 Americans or capture 2 Americans. There was simply no way the president could say, well, we're in a ceasefire, we won't retaliate for that.
Yeah, I'm very curious that Ghalibaf and Araghchi have been silent. They haven't said anything on X for the last couple of days, and I wonder why. Are they being told by the IRGC not to post anything, or is the IRGC who was posting for them and they've decided not to say anything? Are they trying to keep their mouths shut? I don't know. But Iran did claim last night, after the U.S. strikes began, that the Strait of Hormuz is officially closed. Look at what CENTCOM put out just a short time ago. Strait of Hormuz, open for transit. Safe pathways are established for commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. The pathways are available to all vessels not violating the blockade against Iran. Hundreds of ships have transited in the last 2 months. U.S. forces are postured to defend against Iranian aggression. Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, finally, we're hearing from the United States the idea that Iran is more of a gnat buzzing around the head of a horse, right? And eventually that gnat gets squashed.
Well, this was the president's big news yesterday, that the United States has escorted and made sure that lots of ships carrying lots of oil had safe passage through the Straits of Hormuz, which was exactly the message you're saying, saying that Iran does not have control of the strait, and the United States can force it open. And once that happens, then I think the Iranian house of cards sort of falls apart. Their power is their power over the strait. Yeah. And a lot of the last 2 or 3 months has been involved in this kind of useless struggle to get back to where we were before the war started, that is, with an open Strait of Hormuz. But once you get that Strait of Hormuz on, then it seems to me the United States can focus on the actual goal of this war, which was to ensure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon.
A lot of people are wondering why it took this long to get to this point.
Me too.
All right, we'll see how it goes in the hours ahead. Byron, appreciate it. Sandra?
All right.